All right, so picture this, right, like a temple, but it's built like a chariot, a giant one. And it's being pulled by these incredible horses, and it's all like eternally frozen in time on the shores of India. That's the Konark Sun Temple, and that's where we're headed today on this deep dive.
It's not just a temple, though. It's almost like an architectural marvel. And a sundial, like a giant sundial, but it's also like a canvas for these really detailed, intricate carvings. And the carvings actually give us a look into the lives and beliefs of, people from a very long time ago.
So today we're diving into the Konark Sun Temple. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's in Odisha, India.
Right.
And our main source for this one is going to be excerpts from its Wikipedia page.
Perfect.
And we're going to uncover all those secrets, the symbolism, everything behind this really incredible temple. So let's get to it.
Okay, so Konark Sun Temple, its scale and its symbolism are really just breathtaking. King Narsingha Devar, he built it back in 1250 CE, and it's really just this amazing tribute to Surya, the Hindu sun god.
Right, of course.
And it's designed as a 100-foot-high chariot
True.
with wheels and horses, all carved from stone. It's like they took his chariot and made it come to life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And each element has all this meaning, 7 horses, which represent the 7 meters of Sanskrit prosody, and you have 12 pairs of wheels, symbolizing the 12 months of the Hindu calendar. And the entire temple, it's aligned east to catch the first rays of the sunrise.
That's so cool. And I always think it's so fascinating that the wheels, they're not just there to look pretty. They're actually functional sundials. And I've heard they can tell time, down to the minute.
They can.
Is that like a myth, or is that
Well,
true?
right, sure. It's incredible how they did that level of precision.
Yes.
It just really tells you about the astronomical knowledge these people had, and the craftsmanship to incorporate that kind of knowledge into the very design of the building. Wow. It's amazing.
It's a shame that a lot of the temple's actually in ruins.
Mm-hmm.
It was over 200 feet tall originally.
That's true. Yeah. It's a loss for sure, but even with some of it being ruined, it's still so captivating, and its presence, it's so tall and dark. That European sailors used to call it the Black Pagoda.
Really?
Yeah.
So the architecture follows a very specific layout, right?
Yeah.
There's the Rekadul, the Jagamohana, and the Pitadul. Can you break down those terms a little bit and tell us what they actually mean?
Yeah, of course. So the Rekadul is the main sanctuary that's the heart of the temple. And so picture this huge tall structure. It's designed to house, the main deity Surya.
Right.
And then the Jagamohana is the assembly hall. So it sits right in front of the Rekadul.
Okay.
And this is where the devotees would gather.
Got it.
And then finally you have the Pitadul. This is basically a raised platform, and they probably used it for rituals and ceremonies and things like that. And all of this together is arranged in a square.
Okay.
And this is basically mirroring the mandala structure. It's something that you often see in Hindu temples. And it reflects, this deep understanding of sacred geometry and the cosmos.
Very cool. Now the carvings, they're everywhere.
They are.
Right. What kind of scenes and figures did the artisans choose to carve?
Yeah.
And what can we learn from those?
It's a lot. They cover a huge range of life. Musicians playing instruments like the veena and the mardala, and then you have dancers in all these poses, scenes of daily life, animals, both real and mythical, and of course all the Hindu deities.
Yeah.
It's this visual encyclopedia of 13th century India.
Right.
It's incredible.
And are there any that stand out to you?
Oh, there are so many
that you think are.
I know.
Yeah.
One that I always love is it shows girls wringing out their hair after they've been bathing. Yeah, just a simple everyday thing, but it's immortalized in this stone. And then there's another one where the king is actually portrayed smaller than his guru.
Really?
Yeah. And this is meant to symbolize the importance of spiritual guidance.
Wow.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. Overworldly power. That's very cool. But we have this missing duel, right? The main temple.
Right.
It's no longer there. It's no longer standing. So what are some of the theories about what happened to it?
Well, that's one of the biggest mysteries, the missing duel. Some people think it was never actually finished.
Okay.
And that it just collapsed, during the construction. But there are inscriptions from the 14th century, and those actually indicate that the temple was totally finished.
Okay.
And it was being used as a place of worship.
So if it wasn't unfinished, how did it, like, get to be in ruins?
Right, so it's on the coast.
Yeah.
So natural damage is definitely possible. But a lot of historians actually think it was probably destroyed intentionally.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like Konark, it was attacked several times throughout its history.
Wow.
It's sad to think about something so magnificent just being destroyed. I know.
On purpose.
Yeah.
Are there any, like, events or, like, people, attackers that are, like, linked to the temple's destruction?
Well, between the 15th and 17th centuries,
Okay.
Muslim armies attacked Konark multiple times. And there was one particularly devastating attack led by this Muslim general named Kalapad. This was around 1568.
Okay.
And a lot of people think that attack is probably what caused the duel to be destroyed.
Wow. It's a reminder, right, of how, like, conflict and conquest can just lead to the loss of these cultural treasures.
Yeah, totally.
It's really sad. But at least they tried to preserve some of it. They relocated the Aruna Stamba, right? And this is that pillar that's dedicated to Surya's charioteer.
Yes.
And they moved that to Jagannath Temple in Puri.
During the 18th century.
During the 18th century, right? So
Yeah.
it's a symbol of, like, Konark's, this legacy that endures, even though it's in a different spot now.
Exactly.
But even without the duel, there's still so much to learn from Konark.
Sure.
There are all these amazing sculptures. Let's talk about the ones that are, they spark a lot of debate and fascination.
You mean the erotic sculptures?
Yes, the Mithunas.
Yes.
They're pretty striking.
They are.
Tell me about them.
Okay. So they depict couples, in all these stages of intimacy. And they've been interpreted a lot of different ways.
Right.
Like during the colonial era, some people just saw them as, like, pornographic. They thought they were at odds with, the whole religious purpose of the temple.
Yeah.
But I think we have to consider the cultural context. In traditional Hindu thought, sensuality and spirituality, they weren't always seen as, like, separate, or opposing. So maybe these sculptures are actually a celebration of life, like everything, love, desire, physical pleasure, all of it.
So basically they're representing, like, all of Kama.
Exactly. It's one of the 4 goals of human life in Hindu philosophy.
Right.
Alongside Dharma, Artha, and Moksha. So yeah, the erotic sculptures at Konark are expressions of, pursuing pleasure and fulfillment.
Right.
And they're part of the temple's overall message. Like, they challenge our modern day compartmentalization, like all the different parts of life.
It's amazing how art, from so long ago can make us think about things differently, challenge our biases,
Totally.
and, like, help us understand other cultures better.
Absolutely. And the erotic sculptures get a lot of attention.
Yeah.
But there's so much more to see at Konark. There are musicians and dancers and scenes from everyday life, all kinds of gods and goddesses. It's all part of, this really rich tapestry of art and storytelling.
Now, earlier you mentioned the temple was built with 3 different types of stone.
Yes.
Why was that? Like, why use 3, and where did they even come from?
So the 3 types of stone are chlorite, laterite, and condylite.
Okay.
And none of them are actually from anywhere near Konark.
Good.
They had to bring them from ports far away. They probably used the rivers and waterways, that were in the area back then.
Wow, that must have been, like, a huge logistical nightmare.
It must have been. I mean, imagine trying to move those huge blocks of stone without, like, any of the machines we have today.
Right.
It's incredible,
Yeah.
And the craftsmanship is unbelievable. It's called ashlar masonry, where they cut the stones so perfectly and fit them together that you can't even see the joints.
Wow, that's incredible.
The precision is amazing.
Yeah, and they did that with whatever tools they had back then. It's incredible.
It really is. It makes you appreciate the human element,
Yeah.
behind all of this.
So we talked about the height, the carvings, but, like, what about the layout? Were there other things, other structures, like, around the main temple?
Yeah, so excavations have shown that the Konark Sun Temple was actually part of a much larger complex, a sacred city dedicated to Surya.
Wow.
And there were all these other shrines and monuments all around the main temple.
So it wasn't just a temple, it was like a whole
It was a whole complex.
city, basically.
Yeah.
Wow. Were there any, like, notable structures that they found?
Well, one of the most important was the My Baby Temple, and it's to the west of the main temple.
Okay.
And it's thought to be even older
Then Konark.
in the Konark Sun Temple. Yeah, maybe even from the 11th century.
So even before the Chariot Temple, there was already something there dedicated to Surya.
That's what it looks like, yeah.
I wonder if they incorporated that older temple into the design of the bigger one.
Well, they thought at first that the Maya Devi temple was dedicated to Surya's wife.
Oh.
But more recent research suggests that it was also a Surya temple, just smaller, older, and then they incorporated it into the bigger complex later on.
So like layers of history.
Exactly.
Wow. So Konark was this like spiritual center
It was.
with all these different traditions coming together.
Mm-hmm.
And was it mentioned in any historical texts or anything like that?
Yeah, actually, Vaishnava texts mention Konark as a pilgrimage site.
Really?
Yeah, and Chaitanya, he was a 16th century scholar and the founder of Gaudiya Vaishnavism.
Okay.
And he is said to have visited Konark and prayed there.
So this was a big deal place.
It was.
Yeah.
And to, take care of all those pilgrims, the temple complex had practical stuff too, like a kitchen
Okay.
and a lot of wells.
A kitchen. Was it just like a little room for the priests to make food?
No, it was a whole structure,
Okay.
with water channels and cisterns for storage, ovens, areas for like pounding spices and grain. It was probably for preparing feasts, for festivals or like special occasions.
So they weren't just focused on the spiritual stuff.
Right.
They were also focused on like community.
Right, yeah.
That's so interesting.
It shows you, how these ancient Indian temples,
Yeah.
they were much more than just places to pray.
Yeah.
They were social hubs, cultural centers,
Oh, that's amazing.
and, played a big role in people's lives.
And it makes the loss of so much of it even more sad.
I know.
But you're right. It's still such an incredible
It is.
look into the past. And we're helping tell that story.
We are.
Yeah. And speaking of stories, there are all these legends about the Konark Sun Temple, right?
Right.
I want to hear about them.
Yeah, there are a lot of tales.
What kind?
Yeah.
Like curses and treasures and star-crossed lovers.
There are love stories.
Yeah.
But the most famous one
Yeah.
is about the temple's construction.
Okay.
It involves Bisu Maharana, the chief architect.
Okay.
And this huge problem he had.
What was the problem?
So he had to put the crown stone, the kalasa,
Okay.
on top of the spire.
Right.
And the temple was over 200 feet tall.
That's no joke.
Imagine the pressure on this guy.
I could only imagine.
I know.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Well, did he do it?
Well, according to the legend, he tried for days,
Okay.
and he just couldn't figure out how to get this the stone in place.
Mm-hmm.
And then one night,
Mm-hmm.
he had a dream,
Wow.
and Surya, the sun god himself, appeared.
Talk about divine intervention.
Oh, right.
Wow. Okay, so what did Surya tell him?
He told him how to put the crown stone in place,
Oh.
but there was a catch.
a catch. What was the catch?
It involved a sacrifice
Oh, and he's
to
gone.
the temple, to Surya.
What kind of sacrifice? This doesn't sound good.
This is the sad part. It required the sacrifice of Bisu Maharana's own son.
No, his son. Oh my God.
Oh no, it's tragic.
Did he go through with it?
So, according to the legend, his son, Dharmapada, when he learned about this divine decree and how much it was tormenting his father,
Yeah.
he decided to sacrifice himself
Yeah.
to make sure the temple was finished.
What a selfless act.
I know. It really shows you the level of devotion people had back then.
So did it work? Did they get the stone up there?
Well, Dharmapada jumped from the top of the temple into the Chandrabhaga River.
Oh my goodness.
And then the next morning, the crown stone was just there in its place.
Wow. Bittersweet.
Yeah.
But it's like these stories show that behind all this magnificence, there's, there are human stories
Yeah.
full of passion and tragedy.
Exactly. And we don't know for sure if they're true or not, but they still give us a look into the beliefs and the values of the people who built Konark and worshiped there.
And they add meaning,
They do.
They connect us to them.
They do.
It's almost like the stories are woven into the temple itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more than just stone. It's a living, repository of all these stories and beliefs and dreams.
I love that. I love these deep dives because they make me want to learn more.
I know, me too.
Konark, it might be partially ruined, but
Yeah.
it still shows us so much about artistry and devotion.
And storytelling.
And storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's just incredible.
It really makes you think,
It does.
about our place in history and, the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and like we've explored all the physical stuff, but it's really the stories that stick with me,
Yeah, the legends, the human side of things.
Yeah.
That's what makes it come alive.
And that's something for you, our listener, to think about,
Right.
to learn more about the Konark Sun Temple. Because, there's a story behind every stone, every carving, every legend,
That's true.
and they're just waiting to be heard.
So keep exploring.
Keep exploring.
Keep asking questions.
Yes.
Keep discovering,
Yeah.
that magic.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Konark Sun Temple.
Thanks for listening. Yeah, it's a real tragedy. But at least they tried to save some of the temple's treasures. Like, didn't they move the Aruna Stamba?
Yeah, the pillar dedicated to Surya's charioteer.
Yeah.
They took that to the Jagannath Temple in Puri, right?
Exactly. In the 18th century during the Maratha rule. And so it still kind of stands as a symbol of Konark, even though it's, in a different place. But even without the main temple, the rest of Konark, has so much to offer, like the sculptures, for example. There's one type of sculpture in particular that gets a lot of attention.
You mean the erotic sculptures, right?
Yeah, the Mithunas.
Yeah, they're definitely eye-catching. What's the story behind those?
Well, they show couples, being intimate, and people have had a lot of different reactions to them over the years, like back in the colonial era.
Yeah.
Some people thought they were, just straight up pornography and thought that they didn't belong in a religious place. But I think it's important to remember the cultural context. In traditional Hindu thought, sensuality and spirituality weren't always seen as separate things.
Interesting.
So these sculptures could actually be about celebrating all of life. Love, desire, pleasure, all of it.
So like celebrating Kama.
Right, exactly. Remember, Kama is one of the 4 goals of human life in the Hindu philosophy.
Right. Alongside Dharma, Artha, and Moksha.
Exactly. So the erotic sculptures at Konark, they're expressions of that pursuit of pleasure, and they're totally in line with what the temple's all about. And they really challenge how we see things today, how we separate all the different parts of life.
Yeah, it's amazing how something created centuries ago can challenge our assumptions and make us question our own perspectives.
It really is. It shows us that art has so many layers, and it can help us understand different cultures and worldviews.
Now, those erotic sculptures definitely stand out. But there's way more to the carvings at Konark, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. You see musicians and dancers and scenes from everyday life, gods, goddesses, the whole 9 yards. It's all part of this incredible tapestry of art and storytelling.
Now, earlier you mentioned the temple was built using 3 different types of stone.
I did.
Why was that? And where did they even get all that stone?
Well, the 3 types are chlorite, laterite, and condylite. And get this, none of them are actually found near Konark.
No way.
Nope. They had to transport them from quarries that were pretty far away, probably using the rivers and waterways.
That's crazy. Talk about a logistical challenge.
Right. Imagine moving those massive stones without any modern machinery. And on top of that, the craftsmanship is just out of this world.
Yeah, how did they even...
It's called ashlar masonry. They cut the stones so precisely and fit them together so tightly that you can barely see the joints.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really a testament to the skill of the builders.
It really makes you appreciate, the human effort that went into creating something so grand.
Absolutely. It's not just about the materials. It's about the people who put it all together.
Okay, so we've talked about the height, the carvings, but what about the overall layout? Were there other structures around the main temple?
Oh yeah, definitely. Archaeological digs have shown that the Konark Sun Temple was actually part of this huge complex.
Oh, wow.
It was basically a whole sacred city dedicated to Surya.
No kidding.
And there were all these other shrines and monuments around the main temple.
So it was more than just a temple? It was a whole...
It was a whole complex, a whole city devoted to Surya.
Wow. What else did they find there?
Well, one of the most important discoveries was the Mayadevi Temple. It's located just west of the main temple, and it's thought to be even older.
Than the Konark Sun Temple?
Yeah, possibly dating back to the 11th century.
So even before they built that giant chariot temple, there was already a place of worship dedicated to Surya.
It seems like it, yeah. They originally thought the Mayadevi Temple was dedicated to Surya's wife. But more recent research suggests it was also a Surya temple, just a smaller, older one that they later incorporated into this grander complex.
So it's like layers upon layers of history, all dedicated to Surya.
Exactly. And we know that Konark was this, major spiritual center. It attracted people from all different traditions, making it this important religious hub.
Yeah, like a pilgrimage site.
Exactly. It was even mentioned in Vaishnava texts as a pilgrimage site. There's this 16th century scholar and founder of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Chaitanya.
Right.
He supposedly visited and prayed at Konark.
Wow, so this was a pretty big deal.
Oh yeah, it was a big deal. And to accommodate all those pilgrims, the temple complex also had practical structures. They had a whole kitchen and tons of wells.
A kitchen? Was it just a small area for the priests to prepare their daily meals?
Oh no, this was a full-blown kitchen.
Really?
It had water channels and cisterns for storage, ovens, specific areas for pounding spices and grains. They probably used it to prepare huge feasts, for festivals and special occasions.
So Konark wasn't just about spiritual sustenance, it was about community too. Sharing meals, celebrating together.
You got it. It shows that these ancient Indian temples were much more than just places of worship.
Right.
They were also vibrant social and cultural centers, really important parts of the community.
It's amazing how Konark brought together art, architecture, spirituality, and social life, all in one place.
It really is. And it just makes you realize what a huge loss it was when so much of the complex was destroyed.
But even in its current state, the Konark Sun Temple still gives us a glimpse into that rich and glorious past.
And through explorations like ours, we can help make sure that Konark's story continues to be told and appreciated by future generations.
Okay, so let's talk about those stories. What kind of legends and myths have sprung up around this awe-inspiring temple?
Oh, there are so many.
Give me the highlights. Okay, so give me the good stuff. What kind of legends are we talking about? Curses, hidden treasure, star-crossed lovers.
Oh, Konark's got it all. Love stories, tales of bravery. But the most famous one, I think, it's about how they built the temple. It involves the chief architect, Bisu Maharana, and this crazy problem he had to solve.
What was the problem?
He had to place the crown stone, the colossus, at the very top
Right.
of the temple spire, which was over 200 feet tall.
Oh my gosh, that's intense. Talk about pressure.
Right. So the legend goes, he tried everything he could think of for days.
Yeah.
But he just couldn't figure out how to get that stone up there.
Mm-hmm.
Then, one night, he has this dream.
Okay.
And Surya, the sun god himself, appears to him.
Talk about divine intervention. So what did Surya tell him?
He told him how to put the crown stone in place.
Oh, okay.
But of course there's a catch.
Oh, a catch. What kind of catch?
Well, it involved a sacrifice.
Oh no, this doesn't sound good. What kind of sacrifice are we talking about?
Yeah, this is the tragic part of the story. The sacrifice had to be Bisu Maharana's own son.
His son. Oh my God. That's awful. Did he actually do it?
Well, the legend says that his son, Dharmapada, found out about this, what Surya had said, and he saw how much his father was struggling.
Yeah.
So he decided to sacrifice himself to make sure they could finish the temple.
Wow. That's incredibly selfless. Did it actually work though? Did the crown stone get put in place?
Well, the story goes that Dharmapada jumped from the top of the temple into the Chandrabhaga River, and then the very next morning the crown stone was just there, right where it was supposed to be.
Wow. It's a beautiful story, but it's also really sad, But I think these kinds of stories really remind us that there are these human stories behind these huge, incredible structures.
Absolutely. I mean, we don't know if they're true or not, but they still give us this glimpse into what people believed, what they valued.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like those stories become part of the temple itself.
Exactly. The Konark Sun Temple, it's more than just bricks and mortar. It's like a living, breathing collection of stories and beliefs and hopes and dreams.
And that's what I love about these deep dives. They make me want to keep learning, keep exploring.
Me too.
So, Konark, it might be partially in ruins, but it's still an amazing testament to human creativity,
Definitely.
devotion, and the power of stories.
Absolutely. Makes you think about our place in the world, our place in history.
Yeah. We've learned about all the physical stuff, the history, but it's those stories, those legends that really resonate.
They really do bring it to life. And that's something we want you, the listener, to think about as you learn more about Konark. Every stone, every carving, every legend, it all tells a story.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep discovering that magic. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the Konark Sun Temple.
Thanks for listening.